Um, so let's look at this checklist. So it says, in order to make sure that you're communicating what you intended to and your ideas are presented in a logical way, use the following checklist. What I have written fits the, so is what I have written fits the assignment, both in terms of content and format. So that's one of the first things you want to do, especially when you're turning your paper in for a grade or you're turning your paper in for publication, is you want to make sure that you actually are following the rubric and that you hit all the points in the rubric. So it's always good to make sure that you have the rubric in front of you or have the instructions in front of you, and make sure that you're following all the little technical things the teacher or the organization is asking you to adhere to. Also, make sure that you actually wrote on the topic. As a doctoral student, I actually faced this 2 days ago. I was going to write, and I'm thinking that the topic was one thing, and something told me, Ray, go back and check to see if you're writing on the right uh, subject matter. And sure enough, the instructions was something different that I had in my mind. Okay, so it's always good to go back and check to make sure that you're actually writing on topic. And as a doctoral student, I'm pretty neurotic about that. I'll check the instructions about 20 times before, during, and after finishing my work. Next, my thesis is written in one clear sentence. Okay, now you're going to see, and maybe when you had the conversation about thesis with the other instructor, the instructor may have told you, or the teacher may have told you, that the thesis can be 2 sentences, and it can be. However, a strong thesis is probably going to be 1 sentence, should be 1 sentence. Okay, thesis can be 2, but a strong thesis, you can say it in 1 sentence. Okay, make sure that it is clear. Also, make sure that your thesis provides a roadmap, an outline to how you're going to prove your thesis. Also, remember that your thesis must be debatable. Your thesis must be debatable. Okay, so we want to make sure your thesis, that you feel comfortable with your thesis, and ask yourself, okay, especially when you're looking at your conclusion paragraph. Before you look at your conclusion, look at your introduction and ask yourself, did I prove in the body everything I said I was going to prove and cover in the introduction? So in the conclusion, all you have to do is say, yes, I proved those things. And let me just quickly rehash how I proved them. Okay? Remember, in the conclusion, you're not including any new ideas. Okay? Somebody has a question. Can I have 2 related main points in 1 paragraph in the essay? No. Good question, Talal. You should only have 1 topic sentence. 1 topic sentence. Okay? If you have 2 main points in a topic sentence, then then you have two paragraphs. Excuse me. If you have 2 main points in a paragraph, then you have 2 paragraphs. Okay, so you need to separate those paragraphs. Every paragraph should only deal with 1 topic, and then the supporting details support that 1 main idea. All right, that's why establishing strong topic sentences is very, very important. All right, let's move on to the next one. Have I provided adequate background information for the topic of my paper? So normally in the first paragraph, what you want to do is you want to include a little background information. Okay, you don't want to go too far off, but you want to include, especially if you're writing just a 5 paragraph. It depends on what you're writing, but in our case, where we're writing a 5 paragraph essay, you want to make sure that you are covering, that you have introduction that is that kind of gives you the background of why you're writing the paper. What this does it draws your reader in, and it gives them the rationale for your paper, and that can make your paper very interesting and very strong. So look at your introduction and ask yourself, did I provide a background for the topic of my paper? Okay, in essence, that would be a part of your introduction paragraph. Next one. Each of my chunks links back to my thesis in the same way. Yep. So remember, I said that the thesis is going to be a roadmap to your how you go about proving your thesis. So every sentence should be bits of information. Okay, you can call them bits or you can call them chunks. I like bits better. Bits of information that supports your thesis. Okay, so the way I like to think about it is detailed sentences in a paragraph work for the topic sentence and makes the topic sentence strong, and each topic sentence supports the thesis. Okay, make sure your thesis is the last sentence of your paragraph, of the last paragraph in your introduction. So if you only have one introduction paragraph, then it should be the last sentence. Okay. Now your thesis, that's a best practice. However, your thesis can be anywhere in the introduction, but best practice is it's good to have it as the last sentence. Okay. Next point. Within each chunk or bit, I introduce, state, support, and discuss. That's what you want to do. Each sentence, I like this checklist. This checklist is actually awesome. I think you guys should save this into one of your permanent files because it's a really good checklist for editing. So each sentence that you write, you should ask yourself in the editing process, are you stating a bit of information? Are you supporting something that you already said? Or are you going to further discussion about it? Okay. Okay. 3 of those things. If you're not doing any of the 3 of those things, then you need to really question whether you need that sentence in your paragraph. All right. Let's go to the next point. I use a variety of reliable academic resources to support my idea. Every time you have an idea, you should have a support, an academic support from a peer-reviewed, respected source. Okay, so these can be journals, these can be books, these can be some websites, not all. So websites from universities, websites from respected organizations, trade organizations, websites from respected people in the industry or in the profession. Okay, so you want to use those YouTube videos from good sources, from the same type of sources, universities, respected professionals, trade organizations. Okay, it could also be a conversation you had with somebody who's respectable. You can cite that, but you want to have, they should be reliable. We have a question from Razan. In a thesis statement, I should include every point I'm talking to you about. It's not going to point every point, but all the main points. So if you look at a thesis statement generator, it normally will tell you, if you use a generator, which generators can be good when you're first learning how to write a thesis statement. As you get better and better, you're going to be able to write it without a generator. But if you use a thesis statement generator, it's going to tell you to come up with 3 points. Okay, 3 points that's going to be the roadmap to how you explain or how you prove your thesis. Now, the problem with that is you might not have 3 points. Okay, but the suggestion is to try to come up with 3 points. All right, and this is where also you can get your five paragraph essay. Introduction, paragraph 2 would be point number 1. Paragraph 3 would be point number 2. Paragraph 4 would be point number 3, and then your conclusion. So that's where we kind of get the 5 paragraph essay from. So Razan, yeah, you want to make sure that the points that you're talking about are main points which are going to be basically turned into topic sentences. Okay? Or if you have a long essay that you're really just hitting on 3 points. Okay? 3 or less points. Okay? Ideas. And you can have subpoints that, again, get you to your thesis, but you're not going to list 10 things in the thesis statement, is what I'm saying. So you're going to, if you have more than 3, you need to come up and narrow it down to general ideas that are roadmaps. Because the reader should read your thesis statement and know what your position is and how you're going to go about proving your point. Okay? And a good thesis statement will make him interested in reading it too. Okay. Next point. I paraphrase my resources more often than I quote them directly. Exactly. So it's very, very important that you use direct quotes very, very sparingly. Okay. In fact, personally, I don't like to use direct quotes at all. And when I do use a direct quote, the reason why I use the direct quote is because the quote might have been so powerful that a summary or paraphrase doesn't do it any justice. Right? It's just that strong as far as making my point. Okay? So then I will quote. So that's a high standard. So the general rule is only direct quote about 10% of your paper. Okay? About 10%. All right? So if you go into Word and it says you have 50 sentences, maybe only 5 of those sentences should be direct quotes. And in my opinion, that would be too much. But 10% would be 5 of 50, right? Michelle says, introduction is general. Introduction is general to the point in which you're giving a background, all right, about the topic, giving a rationale, and it is also going to include the thesis statement. So be careful with general. It's going to give the reader the background. It's going to get them interested in wanting to read your paper, and it's going to house the thesis statement. So in a way it's general, but it's not too general. Okay? Because you don't want to go off topic in your introduction. Okay. Let's see. Within the chunk. Where am I? I have used APA consistently and correctly. Okay, APA is the association. Association for association. Oh man, I should know this. The American Psychological Association. American Psychological Association. Basically, APA is just a formatting, formatting how we format. All right, and it's normally depending on what organization, what your profession is. So normally the humanities, psychology, obviously it's called the American Psychology Association. So the humanities, psychology, sociology, education, all right, social services, even some science fields use APA. However, there are other formats like MLA and Vancouver. At the university, it has been suggested that we use Vancouver because from what I understand, Vancouver is used for medical professions for certain countries. And I'm not 100% sure whether Saudi uses Vancouver specifically for medical field, but we don't really hamper on that. From my opinion, so all I could do as far as telling you about what formatting source to use a Vancouver because that's what we have used in the past. And then you can learn, someone or your teacher should have talked to you about Vancouver before we had this little incident. However, if they did not, I think we talked about it in the virtual classes. If not, you can go online, and I think I also placed some Vancouver citation websites and documents I think I did that for you guys already. All right, so you can just look in the writing resource folder, and you should see documentation about Vancouver. Also, contact your assigned instructor, your assigned teacher. He should have some documentation also. Okay, next one. So let's talk about that a little bit more. So this is the formatting source that we use, whether it's APA, MLA, Vancouver, whatever it is. Okay, and it basically tells you how to structure your paper, where the margins would be, where the headings are. It tells you and explains all that to you. Okay. So just your block book also, I believe, talks to you about how to structure your paper. Now, the general for all formatting source is generally recognized that you write in font 12 Times New Roman. Okay, so that's very important. Also, being professionals in every formatting source, you should have a cover page for an essay, which would include the title of the essay, headers, and your name, the instructor's name, and the name of the course. Again, you can find that in, I believe, in your block book. What I will do for you guys is I will put a sample cover page, title page, in the rating resource so you can take a look at that. So one thing to note is, especially in your advanced courses, organizations and teachers and professors are very, very strict about whatever formatting source you're using, whether it's APA or Vancouver. They're very strict to the letter. All right, so make sure that you follow and understand how to format. Also, another reason why this is important is for citations. Okay, citations is when we give credit, and we talked about this before, when we give credit to the author or the source where we got the ideas from. So this makes our paper strong and make sure that we're not plagiarizing. Okay, all right. So we cite to give credit to the original source. This actually makes our paper very, very strong because it moves us away from just having opinions to actually saying, oh, this person actually did the research. Okay. And then the other reason is that you don't plagiarize. You don't want to take credit for someone else's ideas. So anytime you get an idea from a journal or a book or something you heard on the radio or something you saw on TV, you need to issue credit to that source. Okay? And it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. The more citations you have, the stronger your paper is. All right? And the reader will get that sense that you really did your homework, that you really did good research. Okay? Make sure the sources are reliable. Okay? And then that's when the APA or the Vancouver or the MLA, the formatting source, comes in that tells you how to format. Okay? APA is a good one. If you grab an APA book, it not only tells you how to format, but it gives you great suggestions on mechanics, grammar, and just writing in general. It's a great, in fact, let me show you the book that I use for my doctoral program as I write. Hold on one second, I'll grab the book. So, you see, this is a APA manual. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's an APA manual. Look how big that is. All right, and it tells you how to format research papers, essays, anything that you write in APA, how to cite it, and it's a good book to really learn how to write at a professional level. Okay, at a very, very strong level. All right, and even I keep it by my side. This is very important. Next point. My conclusion briefly summarizes the information in my paper and implies that there is still more to talk about. Yep. So I've already kind of covered that point earlier when I talked about looking at your introduction. But your conclusion is just a summary of saying, hey, look, this is what I covered in the paper. This is why I proved my thesis. And these are things that we might want to consider in the future. All right. And when we talk about professional conclusion, we never want to act like we know it all. Right. Because that could take away from the power of our paper if we act like we know it all. So it's always good, maybe towards the end, to say, we should, in order to keep this topic going, or one weak point or one thing that we should consider in the future is XYZ that I didn't cover in the paper. All right, this shows that you are a true professional. But again, at the point in which we're writing, it's fine just to make sure you look at that introduction, that in the conclusion you mention everything that you mentioned in the introduction, and you show the reader how you proved the thesis. All right, and then the last one says, I use straightforward professional tone in my paper. Right. So you want to have a professional tone which is neutral. Okay. You don't want to have strong tone. You don't want to come across too strong or too weak. You want to have a consistent, steady, professional tone. Okay, which could include using the plural forms when you're mentioning humans, like as I mentioned before, not saying mankind but humankind. That will lead to your tone. Let me stop there on that first page, because that first page is just awesome when you're looking at editing your paper. Are there any questions so far about editing your paper? Any questions? No questions? All right. I will spend a little bit more time and to talk about the second page. It says use strong verbs and sentences that propel the reader forward. So here's some examples. Weak. The primary focus of Steinberg's work is racism in the American school system. All right. It's stronger to say Steinberg's work focuses on racism in the American school system. Okay. There is disagreement among educational theorists about the best way to deal with standardized tests. Educational theorists disagree about how to deal with standardized tests. So what this is showing you is how to use strong verbs. If you are using a lot of to be verbs like is and are or was and were, then your paper may have some issues in coming across as active and strong. So be very careful when you're using to be verbs. Ask yourself as you're editing your paper, how many to be verbs am I using? Am I using a lot of is and are's and was and were? Okay. Think about making them stronger sentences. Use the active voice. The active voice places the doer of the action in front. And there are some times where the passive voice is okay, but you don't want to have a lot of sentences with the passive voice, because it makes the tone of your paper weak, and it makes your argument weak. So you want to use the active voice as much as possible. Here's an example. It has been determined that Black and Latino students are more severely punished than white students. Okay? Who determined this? All right? That's a passive sentence. All right? Let's look at an active sentence. According to several researchers, and then you got the researchers there, that's the formatting. That looks like APA formatting. According to several researchers, Black and Latino students are severely punished than white students. All right. Here, what happens is, who is the one that determined that? The researchers determined that. So write that. Okay. And then that's going to force you to write strong verbs. Eliminate redundant adverbs and adjectives. All right. Or cliches. Major breakthrough, serious danger. Just say breakthrough, danger. Few in number, just say few. The whole point to great writing is less is more. Okay? So if you have a very long sentence, and sometimes you need long sentences to make a point, but if you have a lot of long sentences, you need to really question whether you can shorten that sentence. Because the longer the sentence, the more likely that sentence is going to not be understandable, and you're going to have coherence issues. Okay? Check for common mistakes. All right? These are common mistakes that everyone makes, even native speakers. It's versus it is, the contraction. So it's is a possessive, and then it's is a contraction. It is. There versus there. Okay? There being a location, there meaning possessive form. Compliment, and compliment. Compliment means to add on to make something better. Compliment is to give somebody a friendly or making a friendly statement to someone. Oh, I like that dress. That's a compliment. Parameters and parameters and perimeters, respectively and respectfully, and respectfully. Okay, respectively talks about in order. Respectively showing obviously gratitude and homage to someone, humility to someone. Make sure that you use spell check and grammar checks. The grammar check in Word is horrible. I really suggest that you spend. I know it's expensive, but it's worth the money. That you spend the money on Grammarly. The free version of Grammarly is not that great, but the professional version is awesome. I really make that suggestion to you. This will, in the future, it just will it'll save you a lot of headaches. It's worth the money. Okay. However, just don't click when Grammarly makes a suggestion. You have to read it to make sure that Grammarly is not changing the meaning of what you're saying, because sometimes Grammarly is wrong, okay? Because you have worded it in a way which is fine and it's passable, but Grammarly doesn't understand it, because ultimately Grammarly is not a human being. So any suggestion that Grammarly makes, make sure you review that suggestion before you make the changes, because it may alter your meaning, or it may just be wrong. I've noticed that Grammarly likes to put commas in front of whether the clause is restrictive or non-restrictive. So you want to just check for that. All right, and then I'm almost at the end here, guys. Let's look at the last page. Peer reading. We talked about peer reading already, getting somebody to look at your work. Hiring an editor. In the academic level, it's not suggested, because that may be falling towards plagiarism. So for our purposes, we don't want to hire an editor. Okay. You can get feedback from your professor, definitely, because that's what we want you to do. We want you to say, hey, can you look at my paper? Just go over it. Okay. I always like to say, don't ask the professor who's grading the paper. Ask someone else. Ask another teacher in the building just to quickly look over and give you some pointers. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep good in the fight, meaning follow the writing process. Don't write the paper the day before, the night before the paper is due. And take some time. Once you write the first draft, put it to the side. Okay, put it to the side. Look at it a day later, because your brain is probably hurting at that point. Look at it a day later and you're gonna and edit it with an open mind. And then look at it another day later and do another editing. Look at it another day later, have your peer look at it. Then after he looks at it or she looks at it, look at it again, and then put it down. And the next day, look at it for proofreading. Make sure your grammar and your punctuation mechanics is all that is good. But if you try to do that all in one sitting, you're gonna miss something, and you could take away from the depth of your paper. And you spend a lot of time on that paper, so you want to present yourself well and get the highest grade possible. I'm going to stop talking right there. Are there any other questions? Are there any questions? Any questions about editing your essay? No? Well, I wish you guys the best of luck. Do well on your essays. Try hard. I know you guys would do well. Remember, this is a good opportunity for you guys. Don't look at what we're experiencing now as a negative. It's actually a really good positive, because from this, a lot of things are going to change. We're going to do a lot of online teaching next semester in the future, because it's the future. This is the way of the world now. And so be prepared to have this type of interaction for the rest of your academic career and your professional career. Online is just the now. We should have been doing this 5 years ago. And what this allows you to do is make yourself a better thinker. Okay, whether it's in English 111 or your chemistry class or your biology class or whatever, your Islamic studies class, whatever the case may be, this makes you a better thinker, and this is what we want ultimately at the university level. Everyone be safe. Have a great weekend. If you have any questions, please include the questions in the discussion board, okay? Because you will be graded on the discussions you include in the discussion board, especially for next week. Especially next week. So make sure you put discussions in the discussion board next week, okay? And the coordinator should have sent a notice to that effect. So make sure you're asking questions and commenting on next week's week 13's discussion board. You will be meeting with your individual teachers next week, your assigned teachers, via the discussion board. All right, not live like this, but he's going to be looking at the discussion board. He's going to grade you based on the discussions you have. Now, I put 3 questions for every student who's taking English 111 to answer, and they're questions about writing an essay. And a lot of those questions are opinion questions, so you cannot get them wrong. But we do expect you to answer those questions, and we do expect you to give at least a 50-word reply to each question. Okay? Well, gentlemen, be safe. Read, do well, and we look forward to seeing you next semester with bells on. Assalamu alaikum. This document is already in Blackboard, Michelle. It's been there for at least 4 days now. So you can download this document already. Look under week 12, hour 4, this document. You will find this document in week 12, hour 4. Assalamu alaikum. Everyone be well. I'm not going to log off because I have an 11 o'clock session. So everybody who's had this session, just log off so I know who the new students are for 11 o'clock. Thank you. All right. I need to know how many people are in for this session, or these are still people left over from the last session. So send me a message and let me know if you're in this session. Actually, I don't think they come until 11:10. So is anyone for the 11 o'clock session in right now? Just send me a message. I think you guys don't come until 11:10.